My daughter-in-law banned me from her wedding photos. I actually heard her whisper to the photographer, "Make her invisible." Weeks later, the wedding album arrived. She smiled so proudly as she opened it in front of everyone. But on page 1, her smile disappeared, because right there in full color was a photo she never expected to see. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and comment down below where you're watching from. I'd love to know. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 56 years old, a school librarian, and a mother to one son, Daniel. My husband passed away years ago, so it has just been me and Daniel for a long time. We are close, and even though losing his father was hard, we leaned on each other. That's why his wedding day meant so much to me. I wanted nothing more than to see him happy and to stand proudly by his side. Daniel met Marissa Blake 2 years ago. She's 26, smart, and ambitious. At first, I was grateful that my son had found someone who loved him. But as time went on, I started to notice something unsettling. Marissa didn't seem to like me. She was polite on the surface, but cold underneath. During the wedding planning, she made little comments that cut me deep. At the dress fitting, she smiled at Daniel and said, "Maybe your mom should sit further back. The photos should really just focus on us." I laughed it off to hide the sting, but inside, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. My younger sister Clara, who has always been protective of me, noticed too. One evening, she whispered, "Evelyn, I don't like the way she talks to you." I forced a smile and told her, "It's his day, Clara. I don't want to make waves." I tried to convince myself I was being too sensitive. I told myself to stay quiet and let them enjoy their moment. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The morning of the wedding was filled with a mix of joy and nervousness. I woke up early, slipped into the dress Daniel helped me pick out, and carefully pinned on a brooch that once belonged to my mother. It was my way of carrying family history with me, of making sure Daniel's father and the generations before us were present in spirit. My heart was heavy, but also proud. I reminded myself, today isn't about me, it's about Daniel. When I arrived at the church, everything looked breathtaking. White flowers draped over the pews, candles flickered softly, and the sound of the string quartet filled the air. Daniel looked handsome in his suit, his eyes shining with excitement. I remember thinking how much his father would have loved to see him this way. Marissa was beautiful in her gown. I will never deny that. She had the kind of presence that made people stop and stare. But what people didn't see was the way her eyes hardened whenever they landed on me. It was like she wanted me to disappear into the background. I felt it every time. As guests mingled and the photographer moved about capturing moments, I decided to step forward and ask if I could get a picture with my son before the ceremony. Daniel smiled warmly and said, "Of course, Mom. Come here." That one sentence filled me with joy. I straightened my shoulders, walked toward him, and tried to ignore the quick frown that passed across Marissa's face. That was when I noticed it. As Daniel turned to greet another guest, Marissa leaned close to the photographer, a middle-aged man named Mark, who had been moving with quiet professionalism all morning. Her voice was low, but I was close enough to hear every word. She said, "Do not let her ruin this album. Make her invisible." My stomach dropped. At first, I thought maybe I misheard, but when Mark glanced at me uncomfortably, I knew I hadn't imagined it. Heat rose to my face, and my hands began to tremble. Invisible, that was the word she used, as if I wasn't Daniel's mother, as if I had no place in this celebration at all. I wanted to say something, to demand an explanation, but the words stuck in my throat. All I could think was, if I make a scene, Daniel's day will be ruined. So, I stood there in silence, swallowing the hurt while my heart pounded in my chest. When it came time for group photos, the whispering command came to life. I found myself being placed on the edges of frames or subtly directed to stand further back. At one point, Marissa even suggested, "Why don't we just get a photo of the immediate family?" And then quickly added, "I mean, me and Daniel, of course." My face burned with shame, but I forced a smile. Clara noticed. She leaned close to me and whispered, "This isn't right, Evelyn. You're his mother. Don't let her push you out." But I shook my head and whispered back, "Not today, Clara. Daniel deserves peace today." As the ceremony continued, I clapped, I smiled, and I even cheered when they kissed. But inside, I felt broken. Every laugh, every camera flash, reminded me that I was being pushed out of my own son's story. At the reception, I sat at my assigned table, smiling politely at guests who chatted about how beautiful the bride looked and how magical the day was. But inside, I was replaying that moment over and over, Marissa's voice telling the photographer to erase me. It was more than humiliation. It was betrayal. I raised Daniel. I carried him through sleepless nights, scraped knees, first heartbreaks, and college goodbyes. And here I was, being treated as if I didn't matter. Mark, the photographer, caught my eye once or twice that evening. His expression was unreadable, almost sympathetic. I wondered if he felt guilty, or if he was just another professional following orders. I didn't know then what he was planning, but I felt his quiet acknowledgement, and somehow it comforted me. When the night ended and I returned home, I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my dress. I looked at the empty space beside me, where my husband should have been, and whispered, "You should have been here. You would know what to do." The tears came fast and hard. I had never felt so erased in my life. That night, I told myself one thing: if this is how Marissa wants it, I will not fight her, but I will not let this destroy me either. I thought I was preparing to be absent from the wedding album, to accept the cruel truth that I had been written out of my own son's milestone. What I didn't know was that this conflict was only the beginning, and that a twist was waiting for me, one that Marissa never expected. Weeks passed after the wedding, and I tried to go back to my normal routines. I buried myself in books at the library, smiled politely at neighbors, and cooked dinners for one. But no matter how hard I tried, the words, "make her invisible," replayed in my head like a cruel echo. I thought of the photos that had been taken that day, the ones where I had been pushed to the edge, cropped out, or ignored completely. I told myself I would probably never see my face in that album, and I braced for that pain. Then one afternoon, Daniel called me. His voice was cheerful, full of excitement. "Mom, the wedding album came in. Marissa wants to host a little get-together this weekend so everyone can see it. You'll come, right?" For a moment, I froze. Every instinct told me to say no. Why would I put myself through the humiliation of sitting in a room full of relatives, watching Marissa proudly flip through pages where I had been erased? But Daniel's voice softened on the other end. "It would mean a lot to me if you were there." I couldn't deny him. I took a deep breath and said, "Of course, sweetheart, I'll be there." The days leading up to the gathering were difficult. I found myself staring at my reflection in the mirror, questioning everything. Should I even go? Should I protect myself from more hurt? Clara came over one evening and found me folding laundry with a frown. She sat down and said firmly, "You can't let her break you, Evelyn. You belong in that album whether she likes it or not. Show up, hold your head high. Don't let her erase you." Her words gave me strength. I realized that my absence would only confirm Marissa's power over me. Attending wasn't about proving something to her. It was about showing Daniel that I was still present, still proud to be his mother. The day of the album reveal arrived. I dressed carefully, choosing a soft blue dress that Daniel once told me brought out my eyes. I wanted to look calm and dignified, even though my heart was pounding with dread. Clara insisted on coming with me, her protective nature shining through. "You won't face this alone," she said, looping her arm through mine as we walked to the car. When we arrived at Daniel and Marissa's home, the atmosphere was light and festive. Family members gathered in the living room, sipping drinks and chatting. Laughter filled the air, but underneath it all, I felt the tension. My eyes quickly found Marissa. She stood in the center of the room, glowing with confidence, holding the thick, leather-bound album in her hands like it was a trophy. Daniel greeted me warmly, hugging me tightly. "I'm so glad you're here, Mom." His embrace eased some of the weight in my chest, but the moment Marissa's eyes met mine, I saw the same coldness I had felt since the beginning. Her smile was polite, but her gaze held that familiar message: "You don't belong here." As everyone settled into their seats, Marissa cleared her throat and said proudly, "Thank you all for coming. We're so excited to share these memories with you." The photographer did an amazing job. Everything came out perfect. The word stung. Perfect. Did perfect mean I wasn't in it at all? My fingers gripped the edge of the armchair as I prepared myself for the pain of seeing page after page without my presence. Clara leaned close and whispered, "Steady yourself. Whatever happens, you'll get through it." I nodded, but inside I was preparing for the worst. I told myself that no matter how much it hurt, I would not cry in front of Marissa. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Marissa placed the album on the coffee table and slowly opened it. Her smile widened as she looked down, ready to present her curated story to the family. I braced myself, my breath held tight in my chest. But as her eyes landed on the first page, something unexpected happened. Her smile faltered. It slipped so quickly that the room seemed to shift with it. A confused murmur rose among the guests. I leaned forward slightly, my heart thudding. Marissa's confident glow had vanished in an instant, replaced by a flicker of shock. In that moment, I realized something was different, something I had not prepared myself for. I had walked into that house expecting humiliation, expecting to disappear from the story of my own son's wedding. But the look on Marissa's face told me that the story was about to take a turn I never saw coming. And that turn, unlike her cruel whisper, was not in her control. The room grew strangely quiet as Marissa stared down at the first page of the album. Her smile, so carefully fixed for the crowd, dissolved in seconds. She blinked rapidly, her hands tightening around the edge of the book. Daniel leaned closer, confused, and asked softly, "What's wrong?" I leaned forward too, my breath caught in my throat. From my angle, I finally saw what had wiped the color from her face. It was a photograph, not just any photograph, but one that took up the entire first page in full, vibrant color. There I was, standing beside Daniel, my hand clasped gently in his, tears glistening in. I was holding the framed portrait of his late father against my chest, the man who should have been there to see his son marry. The sunlight streaming through the church window bathed us in golden light. It wasn't just a picture. It was a moment captured with dignity and love, the kind of image that told a deeper story than all the posed smiles combined. And beneath it, in delicate script, the photographer had added words that pierced the silence. "For those who raised us and made this day possible." The room erupted in a mix of gasps and murmurs. People shifted in their seats, craning their necks to get a better look. I could feel eyes flicking between me, the photo, and Marissa. Daniel's mouth parted slightly, as if he was speechless. His gaze traveled from the picture to me, then back to the album. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking just a little. "This is beautiful." My heart swelled, and I fought back tears. I had prepared myself to be invisible, to be erased. Yet here I was on the very first page, honored in a way that even I hadn't expected. Marissa snapped the album shut, her hands trembling. She forced out a laugh, though it was brittle and sharp. "This wasn't supposed to be here. This isn't what I asked for." Her words hung heavy in the air. Family members exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of confusion and disapproval. Clara, never one to hold her tongue, spoke up from across the room. "Maybe it's exactly what should be there." Marissa's eyes darted toward her, then back at Daniel, who now looked at his wife with a new awareness. "What do you mean it's not what you asked for?" he asked carefully. Marissa stammered. I just meant that I gave the photographer specific instructions. This doesn't match the vision I had." The tension thickened. My chest tightened, and I could see Daniel's confusion sharpening into realization. He looked at her intently, his jaw tightening. "What instructions, Marissa?" Silence stretched, broken only by the sound of Clara clearing her throat. Marissa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I just wanted the album to look perfect, that's all," she said quickly, but her eyes refused to meet his. Daniel looked down at the photo again. He reached out, placed his hand on mine, and said firmly, "This is perfect. This is real. You're my mother. You belong here." His voice grew stronger, louder. "There is no album, no memory, no life moment where you should ever be invisible." Tears filled my eyes as the room erupted in murmurs of agreement. Aunts nodded, cousins smiled softly, and even Marissa's own relatives shifted uncomfortably, clearly disturbed by her attempt to erase me. Marissa tried to recover, flipping through the next few pages quickly, as if she could bury the first one under glossy images of herself in her gown. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had seen the truth, that she had tried to cut me out. But instead, the photographer had given me the place I deserved. I caught sight of Mark, the photographer, standing quietly near the back of the room, His lips curved into the faintest smile, and I realized he had done this on purpose. He had heard her cruel words that day, and rather than obey, he chose to honor me. His act of kindness was subtle but powerful, and in that moment, I silently thanked him with all my heart. The rest of the album was beautiful, yes, but it no longer mattered in the same way. That first page spoke louder than every other image combined. It revealed a truth that Marissa had worked so hard to hide. Family is not perfect portraits and polished smiles. Family is love, sacrifice, and history, and I had earned my place in that story. Marissa's composure cracked. She pushed the album toward Daniel and muttered, "If you're all so happy with it, then fine." She excused herself from the room, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. Daniel looked after her, his face clouded with disappointment. Then he turned back to me and pulled me into a tight hug, right there in front of everyone. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered into my hair. "I didn't know. I should have noticed. But I promise you this, I'll never let anyone try to erase you again." That embrace meant more to me than words could express. It wasn't just about a photo or an album. It was about being seen, being valued, being remembered as the mother who had given her all. As I held onto my son, the heaviness I had carried since the wedding day finally lifted. I had braced myself to disappear, but instead, I found myself standing in the spotlight of truth. And for the first time in weeks, I felt whole again. The silence in the living room after Marissa stormed out was heavy. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some pretending to flip through the remaining pages of the album, others whispering quietly to one another. I sat there with Daniel's arm still wrapped around me, feeling a mixture of emotions, relief, vindication, but also sadness. I had not wanted this moment to turn into a spectacle, but the truth had forced its way to the surface. Clara leaned over and squeezed my hand. "You see," she whispered, "the truth always finds a way." Her eyes sparkled with pride, and for once, I let myself believe it. Daniel broke the silence with a deep sigh. "Everyone, thank you for being here. I know this wasn't what we expected, but I'm glad you saw this picture, because it matters." His words carried a firmness that made my heart ache with love. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a background character in my own son's life. When the gathering ended, family members came up to me quietly, one by one. My sister-in-law hugged me and said softly, "Evelyn, you raised a good man. Don't ever let anyone take that away from you." A cousin smiled warmly and added, "That photo was the most powerful part of the whole album." Their words soothed me like balm on a wound. Later, when most of the guests had left, Daniel walked me to my car. The night air was cool, and the house behind us glowed with warm lights, but there was a tension still lingering inside. He looked at me with guilt in his eyes. "Mom, I need to apologize. I should have noticed how Marissa was treating you. I was so caught up in the wedding and in trying to make her happy that I didn't see it." I shook my head. "Daniel, you don't owe me an apology. You were starting a new life. You deserve to be happy. I just didn't want to burden you with my hurt." But Daniel wouldn't accept that. He took my hands firmly and said, "You've never been a burden, Mom. You gave me everything, and I let someone make you feel small on the most important day of my life. That won't happen again." His voice trembled, but there was strength in his eyes. I hugged him tightly, feeling his words sink into my soul. For so long, I had convinced myself that silence was the only way to keep peace. But now I realized that silence had allowed someone else to try to erase me. Daniel's promise reminded me that my place in his life was unshakable. That night, when I returned home, I placed the album gently on my kitchen table. I opened it again, and my eyes returned to the first page. There we were, me, Daniel, and the memory of his father, all captured in one powerful frame. I cried, not out of sorrow, but out of gratitude. That one picture told a truth no one could erase, that I mattered. In the days that followed, things changed subtly. Marissa avoided me, and though she kept her smile polished for the outside world, the tension between us was clear. Family gatherings were more complicated, conversations more careful, but for the first time, I didn't shrink away from it. I stood a little taller, spoke a little louder, and carried myself with the quiet dignity of someone who had survived being erased and come back stronger. Clara teased me one afternoon. "Look at you now. It's like that picture gave you your voice back." She wasn't wrong. The greatest lesson I took from all of it was this: people can try to rewrite your role in their story, but they can't erase the truth. I had carried Daniel in my arms when he was a baby, wiped his tears when life hurt him, and celebrated his every milestone. No one could take that from me. I realized, too, that sometimes we think keeping the peace means staying silent, but peace without respect is just another kind of loss. Respect is earned, but it is also demanded by the way we carry ourselves. That photo, placed at the very front of the album, reminded me that my place as a mother was not negotiable. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that love, real love, will always find a way to be seen. Marissa may have wanted me invisible, but the love between a mother and her son cannot be cropped out, cannot be edited away, and certainly cannot be erased from memory. Now, when I look at that album on my shelf, I don't see betrayal anymore. I see resilience. I see proof that dignity has a way of shining through even the darkest moments. I see my husband's face in that framed photo, and I know he would be proud. And most importantly, I see myself, visible, present, and unashamed. So if you are listening to my story, and you've ever felt like someone tried to push you out, to silence you, or to make you feel like you don't belong, remember this: you are not invisible. Your love, your sacrifices, your truth, they matter more than anyone's opinion. Stand tall, because no one can erase the role you are meant to play. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you felt connected to it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and comment below where you're watching from. I love reading your messages and knowing this community is growing around real stories like this one.